Playing video games together with friends is always more fun than playing alone, but what if your buddies are gaming on a different platform? Essentially, you've got two options: invest in a new system or try to find some cross-platform co-op games you can all play together. Needless to say, one of those options is cheaper and easier than the other. Cross-platform co-op games used to be a rarity, but these days that's no longer the case. From shooters and RPGs to action games and platformers, there are plenty of amazing titles out there that support cross-play. Here's a handy list of some of the best games available right now. The dwarves are commonplace in fantasy, but you rarely get to see them in a sci-fi setting. Thankfully, there's at least one game out there that gives space dwarves the love they deserve. That game is, of course, Deep Rock Galactic, a co-op shooter where you explore caves and shoot swarms of aliens as one of 4 different classes. Traditional dwarven activities like mining and drinking are present here as well. Deep Rock Galactic offers endless fun thanks to its procedurally generated caves that provide you and your friends with new, weird, and wonderful adventures every time you boot up the game. If exploration isn't your cup of tea, maybe the fully destructible environments and vast array of futuristic weaponry will be more up your alley. Either way, Deep Rock Galactic is one of the most unique co-op games we've had in years and should not be overlooked if you're itching for something fresh to play with your buddies. Inspired by Starship Troopers, Helldivers 2 is a co-op third-person shooter where you team up with other players to squash giant alien bugs and robots in the name of democracy. The game doesn't take itself too seriously and is an absolute blast to play with friends and strangers alike. If you're looking for a solid shooter with a good sense of humor, there are few better choices out there. Before you decide to engage in galactic warfare, we should mention that the game is only available on PS5 and PC. There have been rumors that Helldivers 2 might make the jump to Xbox at some point in the future, but the chances of that happening are very slim. In the meantime, the game offers full cross-platform support between PS5 and PC, with the caveat that you'll need a PSN account even if you're playing on Windows. Chivalry II is the premier medieval warfare simulator where you spill blood on the battlefield alongside other melee combat enthusiasts. The game's goal is to recreate those big cinematic movie moments where 2 armies of medieval soldiers are clashing into each other, complete with screaming and limbs flying everywhere. It's a bit like Total War, but you're playing in first person and can freely customize your character. Chivalry II is pretty unique in that it focuses almost entirely on melee combat. You can play as an archer, but only a small handful of them are allowed per team, and quite frankly, shooting a bow from behind a barrel is nowhere near as entertaining as charging into the fray with a poleaxe while yelling at the top of your lungs, or throwing a pig at an enemy after hurling some Monty Python-esque insults, or cleaving helpless peasants in twain as they try to defend themselves with pitchforks. Honestly, the possibilities for mindless fun in this game are almost endless. Much like a fine wine, Warframe has gotten progressively better over the 10 years it's been around. This is the quintessential co-op looter shooter that went on to inspire Destiny, The Division, and many other titles with similar gameplay loops. If you're familiar with the genre, you already know what to expect here. Choose a character archetype, jump into missions, kill everything that moves, loot everything that isn't nailed down, extract, and prepare for the next mission. There's also a progression system and various other mechanics that prevent things from getting repetitive. Warframe's biggest selling point is the titular exosuit that grants the wearer incredible powers. The Warframes basically serve as character archetypes, and there are well over 40 of them to choose from. Each suit looks unique and comes with a different set of abilities. Unlocking new Warframes is a highly involved and often time-consuming process, but that's exactly what makes the whole thing so satisfying. You can skip some of the grind by opening up your wallet, but you could just as easily not spend a dime as the game is entirely free to play. Now, here's a co-op cross-platform game that the whole family can enjoy. Grounded is basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the video game. In Grounded, you play as a child who was shrunk down to the size of an ant through some mysterious process and must now brave the dangers of the backyard to try to learn what happened and possibly get back to normal someday. Until that day comes, you get to have fun with a group of friends in a sandbox world filled with all sorts of creepy crawlies. Grounded is a survival crafter that involves a fair amount of resource gathering and base building. But as soon as you're done with the boring part, you can go out into the world and fight oversized spiders, beetles, and various other bugs. There's even an underwater section that feels a bit like a less terrifying version of Subnautica. Good fun all around, and mostly family friendly provided you or your kids don't have a bad case of arachnophobia. Have you ever watched a slasher horror movie and thought to yourself, hey, I want to be chased through the woods by a machete-wielding serial killer dressed as a clown? If the answer is yes, first off, you should probably look into therapy. But secondly, it just so happens that there are several video games out there that offer that exact experience, with Dead by Daylight being easily the best of the bunch. Dead by Daylight is a 4v1 asymmetric survival horror game where you can either play the killer or join up with 3 other players and take on the role of survivors. As a survivor, you must work together with your team to quickly get out of dodge before the killer gets you. Playing as the killer is arguably more fun, and definitely less stressful, but co-op is reserved exclusively for survivors. MOBAs are usually associated with PCS, but there are a couple of good ones available on consoles too. Arguably the best among them is Smite, a game where players take on the role of gods from various mythologies around the world. Smite is very similar to other MOBAs in terms of gameplay, but the fact that it uses a third-person perspective immediately makes it stand out from the crowd. It's also one of the main reasons why you can play it with a controller. Depending on when you're reading this, Smite 2 might already be available on consoles complete with cross-platform functionality. But as of this writing, the sequel is only available on Steam in early access, with the full launch coming sometime in early 2025. Until then, only the original can be played with people from other platforms. Almost a full decade since its initial launch, Rocket League remains one of the best cross-platform sports games you can play with your friends. The game is constantly being updated with new customization options, and additional modes and events are still being added at regular intervals. It's not necessarily one of those games that will keep you hooked for hours on end, but it works great as a casual game you can log into once in a while to play a few matches with your friends. Rocket League has full cross-platform support across all systems, but the PC version comes with a little caveat worth mentioning. The game was originally launched on Steam, but has since moved to the Epic Games Store and is no longer available on Valve's client. However, if you already owned Rocket League on Steam prior to the Switch, you can continue playing it there. Having to install an additional launcher is always a bit of a bummer, but on the bright side, the game is free to play since moving to the Age. The Metroidvania genre has become so common that even some great ones can at times feel predictable or even formulaic. Animal Wealth sets itself apart by de-emphasizing combat in favor of clever puzzle solving and a tightly crafted, intricate world. The Dark World has a lo-fi aesthetic that doesn't look quite like anything else, and as you progress through it, you'll find all sorts of strange household objects and toys that open up the world in surprising ways. The map is small but densely packed with secrets to uncover and small interactions to discover, making for a surprisingly refreshing take on the genre. And it's a perfect fit for the Switch portability, letting you hold the inviting world of Animal well in your hands. Animal Crossing New Horizons remains one of the most popular and wholesome games on Nintendo Switch. Just as lockdowns began happening across the world, Animal Crossing New Horizons invited players to a tranquil island for a relaxing loop of activities like fishing, bug catching, and perfecting the layout of their virtual homes. Nintendo has steadily introduced new features to New Horizons, including plenty of free content as well as the massive Happy Home Paradise DLC. New Horizons also has robust customization features, including a new terraforming feature that gives you complete control over the terrain of your island. Whether you're conversing with your fellow residents, trying to finish your museum catalogue, or visiting your friends' islands, Animal Crossing New Horizons is a constant charmer.